Welcome to everyone. We are so glad to have you here. We are just looking forward to sharing with you about Global Lead, USAID's flagship youth initiative on leadership, education, advancing development. With that, we have an exciting short 1-minute video on the initiative that we would like to share with you. So I invite everyone to join us as we watch this video. Wonderful. Thank you so much. As you can see in the video, we're highlighting the different areas that young people are leading already, whether that be, like it said, climate change or combating the pandemic. Young people are already leading. So we would love for you to respond in the chat. If you identify as a young person, 15 to 29, which SDG are you the most passionate about? We would love to hear from you. And those who identify as adults, maybe 30 or older, how do you see young people making a difference in your community? I see some responses already, folks who are passionate about education, working on health and well-being in their communities, adults who are seeing their siblings working at the university level or taking specific actions on climate action and making collective action movements. This is exactly what Global Lead is all about. We hope to share with you more about this flagship initiative today, and we hope that you walk away with a new understanding of USAID's commitment to working with young people through initiatives like Global Lead, along with some practical recommendations for young people who are leading this change, and as well as a toolkit that we're very excited to launch for you for those who are designing and implementing youth programs. Whether that be at USAID operating units or implementing partners, we're really excited to share a new resource with you today. Our discussion will also include a panel between Mike McCabe, our agency senior advisor on youth, with 3 remarkable young people about what does and does not work in including youth voices and building opportunities for youth. So we are, with that, I am so thankful to everyone who has continued to respond in the chat. We're capturing all of this. It's great to see the diversity of responses that you've provided. With that, I'd like to just share a little bit about Global Lead, what it is, and a little bit on our programming framework. First of all, Global Lead is all about partnership. It's USAID's agency-wide initiative to partner with young people and meet development objectives and the SDGs through enhanced education, civic and political engagement, and leadership opportunities across all sectors. This is reflected in the priorities of our administrator, Samantha Power, and her recognition that young people are some of our strongest partners. And in fact, youth are the ones driving change right now. You can see on the slide a great photo of her with a group of young people and a quote saying exactly that young people are the ones driving change. And USAID is here to recognize that you're our strongest partners and we are working with you now. And that's what Global Lead is all about. On the next slide, we have an exciting new framework to share with you. So this is hot off the presses. It's included in our Global Lead toolkit that you'll learn more about later. There's a lot happening in this graphic, but we do want to share with you how the initiative of Global Lead is partnering with young leaders, with higher education institutions, civil society, and others to support young change makers, principally to improve education. So taking on civics curriculum, media literacy training, and debate programs. It's also focused on increasing engagement in civic and political issues, programs that are working on service learning or volunteerism and voter registration, as well as strengthening the leadership skills and organizing of youth, whether that be through leadership training, capacity building of youth-led organizations, or membership in collective leadership groups. You can see here how the framework shows that youth programming can build on positive youth development, this foundation that USAID has been investing in for almost 10 years now, into creating an approach that moves from development into collective action and then ultimately leads into systemic change. So you'll have an opportunity to see more of this framework in a little bit, but we wanted to share it with you from the beginning. The next slide shows how the initiative is mobilizing 1 million young leaders to guide their country's progress on a range of challenges, which you can see a few highlighted here, whether that be human rights, climate action, fair governance, job skills, global health, which we've heard a lot about already today, violence prevention, or others. These priorities, of course, align with the SDGs and allow USAID to contribute toward these important global goals. We also want to highlight that our online platform, Youth Lead, is a key place for young people to network virtually, to connect and find the resources that they need. We have starter kits that align to the different SDGs and different topic areas that young people are passionate about and organizing on. So those toolkits are a great way to get started and to organize amongst each other for positive change making. So if you are not a member of Youth Lead, which hopefully everyone here is, please sign up today. It's really, really a great resource. Even for those who are over age 30, 35, you can also join as a mentor to connect with these young people. Thank you, Maria, for dropping the link in the chat. That's perfect. To bring the initiative a little bit more to life, I'd like to just highlight a few country level examples. We have examples from Guatemala, North Macedonia, and Rwanda. Really briefly, in Guatemala, the Puentes program supports young people in high migration areas so that they can have access to education, employment, entrepreneurship opportunities, and life skills. And this program really uses a wide range of the programming interventions that are a part of Global Lead. So you can see there youth networking, youth centers, scholarships, internships. These are all examples of how this great program is building out the Global Lead priorities. In North Macedonia, the Youth Ethnic Integration Program fosters positive interactions among ethnically diverse youth at the school and community level, and improve civic engagement among the youth in Macedonia. So you can see there, they're utilizing youth centers and project-based learning, civic education, and advocacy training to promote the leadership skills of young people in North Macedonia. And then thirdly, in Rwanda, the Cyber Rwanda digital platform uses technology to improve the health and livelihood of urban adolescents. So you can see there, they're doing peer mentorship, having youth-led media and performances, leadership training, and training on digital literacy, which we all know is so important in this digital age. So each of these examples uses a variety of the intervention models, which you'll see a little later on in the session during our Global Lead Toolkit highlighting. We wanted to just also share that Global Lead does support USAID's regional youth networks. So programs that many of you have heard of or participated in, like YALI, Eden, and Waisili. These are great regional networks that train, organize, and mobilize young leaders across regions. I think we might have a slide that highlights those different regional networks. We'd love to hear from you if you have participated in any of those. These are great networks that allow young people to have the skills training and entrepreneurship, peer-to-peer learning, all of these different intervention models that make up Global Lead. So with that, thanks for watching our video and learning a little bit about this exciting flagship initiative for the agency. With that, I'm pleased to pass it over to the agency Senior Advisor for Youth, Mike McCabe, for a panel discussion with some amazing young leaders. Over to you, Mike.
We're really excited about the progress made by the youth development field and young change makers over these past few years, especially during the time of the pandemic. We're also committed through our Global Lead initiative to really create new partnerships between USAID, young people, and other partners to meet the most compelling challenges facing communities and countries, whether that's climate or revitalizing democracy, addressing the pandemic's impacts, or employment and health issues. So I'm pleased to have the opportunity to work and talk with three young change makers in the civic political space who represent what initiatives like Global Lead are all about in terms of supporting long-term partnerships with Generation 2030. I'm joined by Anne Amalini Figueroa, who is from Sri Lanka. Anne is a human rights defender, a women's rights advocate, and a fisheries community advocate who's taking part in the SEP's Emerging Leaders Academy in Sri Lanka. She was born and raised in the Mandar district of northern Sri Lanka, which is a fishery community that was heavily impacted by the conflict. And she's worked on a number of initiatives, including livelihood development through Bridging Sri Lanka, as well as working also on the Jaffna Social Action Center, where she's worked to increase women's representation in politics, and with the National Fisheries Solidarity Movement, where she's advocated for the role of women-led fisher groups and building this continuum of engagement with USAID partners on the voice of young women leaders. We also have Darnia Onishko, who is the program officer with the Community of Democracies and has a special focus on the cross-cutting theme of youth and gender equality. And within the Community of Democracies, she coordinates their Youth Leads effort, which is a newly established group of democracy advocates, youth democracy activists and advocates from 24 countries who guide youth-related programming. And she's also responsible for the activities of the Working Group on Women and Democracy that comprises member states as well as civil society to advance gender equality and civic political engagement. And finally, she also is a leader within the European Democracy Youth Network, which USAID has been funding across different countries in that region. Anais Salazar is a youth lead ambassador as well as a program officer with DAI in Guatemala. And she works on the USAID-funded Nexos Locales program, which promotes youth civic political engagement with the indigenous young people in the Western Highlands of the country. She's also the president of the Youth Network for Integral Development, which is a leadership platform in that region, working to increase young people's engagement in local governance, as well as on the National Development Council's network. Her continuum of engagement with USG-funded programs includes her role in the Global UGrad Ambassadorship, which was part of U.S. State Department, and as a beneficiary of the Young Leaders of the Americas Initiative, YLI. So welcome to you all, and let's jump in. Daria and Anne, could each of you speak for just a few minutes to tell me briefly about your work and engagement through U.S. government-supported programs, and what strategies or tactics have you seen work really well to create more civic political participation and engagement by young people in these development programs? Let's start with Daria.
Hello, thanks so much, Mike. And thank you for having me at the YouthPower2 Symposium. And also congratulations on presenting the Global Lead Framework for programs across sectors. I thought it's absolutely a great and useful tool to support youth participation. So first of all, recognizing youth agency means recognizing that young people take actions in the transformation of society. As such, they are actors, knowledge holders, also innovators. And youth are the leaders of today. I cannot underline this more. And we should see them not only as beneficiaries, but also as actors and partners in our work. For example, at the Community of Democracies International Organization, we involve the COD Youth Leads, our youth group, in guiding programs of the community, also its secretariat. They take lead on initiating and conceptualizing discussions and events, provide input for organizations' declarations at ministerial level, and they also have a seat, as it was in the past, at the 10th Ministerial Conference of the Community of Democracies. But when I look at other youth programs that I was part of or currently am, including the European Democracy Youth Network, I can outline briefly just a few strategies that I thought worked well or didn't. So sometimes we see programs targeting youth specifically in isolated manner, for example, organizing conferences or meetings only for youth on the margins of high-level or expert meetings. We see it right now almost in every big conference these days. Then when it is really highly important to have youth represented in such circles, by not mixing youth with senior participants or not giving them space to speak, we exclude youth from decision-making tables. It really limits their engagement with leaders. This way, at the same time, we widen this intergenerational gap, and youth perspectives are not being considered when making decisions about policy or program development that directly impacts their lives also. On the other hand, quickly, the training of trainers projects for youth, I thought, is a great example of an intervention that brings substantial results and also engages youth. Also, because as their competencies are being strengthened, participants take on more leadership roles in leading and training, for example. And the last one that I've seen work well is uniting youth around areas that interest them. It can be art, music, performance, especially if a program needs to target a general audience, not a specific youth group, engagement politics, or entrepreneurship. Maybe developing creative programming, considering their interest, will bring more youth on board. Thank you.
That's awesome, Daria. Thank you. Anai, when you look at Nexos Locales and the work in the Western Highlands, what are some of the ways that your work has been really supporting this expansion of youth civic political engagement with Indigenous youth?
Thank you, Mike. Well, I would like to highlight also two strategies that I think are key, and that is innovative capacity building approaches, providing young people with programs in which they can start with the very basics of civic engagement and progress towards more advanced tasks such as policy analysis and presenting youth-led initiatives for government. I think that that is essential. And also the second thing that I want to highlight is platforms. How do we go about providing spaces for young people to apply the knowledge that they're learning and to put those skills into practice? So I think a great way to do that, and some great examples have been the Acción Transformadora project as well, which is providing young people with a program that allows them to progress through the spectrum of civic engagement. And also for me, I think that a great space would be youth organizations that have been sustained by the US funded projects, and also Youth Lead that has provided me the opportunity to partner with Nexos Locales, to partner with Acción Transformadora, to further expand and connect young leaders across the country, and of course, to propel them into a global platform.
Thanks so much. Yeah, the Youth Lead platform now has 14,000 young change makers like you every week connecting on different types of collaboration. So that's been great to have your leadership on that. And can you tell us a little bit from your program with the Emerging Leaders Academy in Sri Lanka, how has that impacted you, and how have you been able to then, build out that opportunity for other young women on civic political participation?
Thank you, Mike, for this great opportunity to tell my opinion and my experience with other young people out there through this platform. As you already mentioned about my work, and I'm being part of Emerging Leaders Academy through International Republic Institute, and it was a really great platform for me because as you already mentioned about my background a little bit, I'm coming from a fisheries community. At the same time, I'm coming from northern part of Sri Lanka, which is affected and experienced 30 years of civil war, and we are rebuilding all the damages that we get from the war. And also at the same time, my society is it's still having the problem for the women, and we have all form of discrimination and stereotypes and stigmas against the women. When we are coming out to prove our skills and build our capacity, we will definitely get more challenges compared with other young people out there. When I joined with Emerging Leaders Academy, I was the only person who was selected from my own district and also from the fisheries community, and it's really helped me to enhance my skill and get to know build down my network and get to know the more professionals, and how I can develop my skills and how can I apply with my community. I learned through ELA, and I'm helping my colleagues and my other young people in my own district. And in if I talk about my experience, I also coming from a poverty background, so I know how it's getting opportunities like ELA for a person who grew up in poverty and also faced all kind of discrimination for the women. And I'm utilizing this opportunity to be set an example for other women out there in my community, and I wanted to be the voice for the voiceless, and I also wanted to represent my fisheries community and let our voices and our issues should be heard by others, and through that I believe that I can have a change and I can make a change in my community.
Thank you. That's great. Anai, are there some program interventions that are in that Global Lead Toolkit or that you've seen that sometimes are overused and maybe aren't as effective with young people? And on the flip side, what interventions do you think are often overlooked, but really have a lot of potential to have impact in building this kind of long-term partnership on civic political engagement?
Thank you, Mike. I think it's very important to highlight what is being a little bit overused and what could be actually effective. I want to talk about specifically youth organization, right? So how are we building and with which focus are we building youth organizations? Sometimes those are very short-termed and there's a very short-term approach to them. So once young people have achieved, say, presenting a youth policy, a certain amount of outcomes, that they tend to dissolve because there is not enough sustainability goals in long-term approaches to them. So I would think that that is something that needs to be improved. And on the flip side, for example, instead of focusing on building more youth organizations, programs can focus on strengthening those who are already functional and operating in the context. So Youth EXO is a great example of this. So they're leveraging the knowledge of the context that already established youth organizations have. My youth organization is working with Youth EXO, and we are developing research and data-driven analysis to tackle development challenges. So they're strengthening us both internally and also allowing us to lead other solutions to impact other young people.
That's an awesome example. Thanks so much. Daria, how about yourself? What maybe is overused a bit, and what are we not using enough in our interventions that could really broaden the collective action of young people?
Thanks, Mike. So first of all, I wanted to say that Global Youth Framework mentions many very useful interventions. Just for a moment, I wanted to go back to those that might be still overlooked a little bit. So besides uniting youth around activities that interest them, organizations working with youth also need to consider environments where youth engage and participate the most, such as digital spaces. And as we have many analyses and studies that find that many young people use those spaces to develop their civic identities and also express their political stances in creative ways. As such, considering that Instagram, Snapchat, also TikTok have an especially strong following among young adults, more and more organizations explore platforms like this to catch the attention of youth. So while memes and TikTok videos are often considered shallow, maybe not very serious acts of engagement, still young people think and take this participation seriously. So it's really a matter of perspective, and I don't think we can ignore it at this moment. And another intervention I wanted to mention briefly is the peer-to-peer service. So Peer-based programs are empowering to those who take part. Many young people who undertake the role of trained peer experience a sense of empowerment that results from their ability also to take responsibility for sharing knowledge and skills within their peer group. So this can be done in form of drop-in centers, structured peer reports programs, maybe a weekend camp or peer educational leadership program. All of these can provide empowerment to groups who tend to have low levels of social capital, or some who don't tend to ask for support when it's really needed. Thank you.
That's awesome. And any of those interventions that you think are sometimes underutilized? And I also want to ask you, what recommendations would you give development practitioners or donors on ways to really improve the integration of young people's voices into civic political engagement?
I also want to add my point on this particular matter, that I have seen in my experience that many young organizations only focus on creating awareness to the young people, and they just ignore the part that where young people can put their knowledge and their learning point into the actions, like community projects. But when I started to work with ELA, and we, of course, we learn a certain knowledge and we shared each other's, and now we are given a particular community organization, community projects that we can done, and where we can put it in action. And you know, when I start ELA, there is only 4 members were joining the represent Northern Province, and now the 4 giving knowledge to other 25 young people out there in the same province. And this should be more focused, and this should be happen when other organizations are planning their projects for the young people, because we cannot only focus on creating awareness. We have to help the young people who can add their learnings into action. And also I would like to recommend the organization, when they are planning for intervention or activities to the young people, they have to focus more on diversity, and they have to focus on gender balance, because, and also they have to focus on the people who are having lack of access to the opportunity, and also the people who are representing marginalized community, because these people are still looking for the opportunity where they can build their capacity, and also where the platform, they're looking for the platform where they can tell their issues, and they can learn and share about the issues, and how they can tackle all the issues they have faced. And I think instead of we giving the opportunities to the privileged people or privileged young people, we have to more focus on diversity, and we have to focus on marginalized young
Thank you.
people.
That's great. Anai, what specific recommendations would you give to donors and development practitioners on ways to really concretely improve the integration of youth into civic political programs?
Thank you. Well, I would like to give 2 recommendations. First is think locally, right? So engage with the local youth organizations that you have in your own context where the programs are being applied. And the second thing, don't be afraid to let people, young people, lead intervention with you. Provide them that opportunity to deploy solutions that will be great to impact their peers. And so I would just really encourage programs to also provide professional opportunities for young people. I think this is not very addressed, but I think it's great when young professionals are provided the opportunity to work with USAID programs as well, because it's a great stepping stone in their careers and in their journey to self-reliance.
That's awesome. Daria, to bring us home on this segment, what do you think really needs to happen right now? What recommendations do we need to implement as donors and partners to really expand out the continuum of opportunities for youth civic and political engagement, collective leadership? And you know, when we say that we want young people to be partners in this development through that type of approach, what needs to change to make that happen?
Thanks, Mike. I think so many strategies and interventions were already mentioned. So I'm just going to say that together with building and strengthening the expertise and skills of youth, we really need to trust youth expertise and opinions, also involve them as experts and leaders. So for example, creating pools of young experts or making use of existing online platforms that list youth experts can help. But generally, youth being partners for development organizations and donors means that we should involve them meaningfully, treat them as equal partners, address challenges that youth experience. We need to increase visibility of youth efforts and connect them more with senior leaders. And these are exactly the goals that the Global Lead Framework tries to achieve. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you to all three of you for your ongoing journey on civic political leadership in your countries and globally, and for helping to explore some of the interventions that are part of the Global Lead package that is drawn from experiences around the world. Hillary and Jesse, back to you.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everybody. My name is Jessie Ellisberg, and I am very excited to be with you for the next part of this session after we've just heard some really wonderful insights. I was furiously taking pages of notes listening to Daria, Anne, and Anai, and now it's my pleasure to tell you all a little bit about the Global Lead Toolkit. And I want to pick up on what Daria was just saying about the importance of trusting young people as experts and leaders and engaging them meaningfully. And so the Global Lead Toolkit is a new resource that we're giving you a sneak preview of today that is designed to help organizations and youth-focused and youth-inclusive programming around the world do just that, so that we can really realize this vision of working in partnership with young leaders to achieve development objectives. So the Global Lead Toolkit has a bunch of different components and sections with curated resources and guidance. I want to just touch briefly on a few of those key elements, and then we're actually going to do a little bit of an activity so that I'm not just talking at you, but you're getting a chance to get a little bit familiar with the toolkit. So we have some main sections focused on guidance on program planning, which includes resources and guidance around integrating youth voices, context analysis, program design, monitoring, evaluation, research and learning, and communications. And I want to underscore the importance of communications. I think it's a really an unmet opportunity or potential for doing a lot more on youth-led and youth-focused communications works in our development programming. And another key component of the Global Lead Toolkit is this adaptable intervention models database. We've curated 26 different intervention models that are designed to be built into programming that will enhance opportunities for youth civic engagement and leadership development. And they run a wide range of possibilities. They're meant to be adaptable for a wide range of sectors of programming and different contexts. And the database provides some guidance about recommended most relevant sectors, most relevant age groups, illustrative indicators that could be used, and so on. Also examples of existing programs that use each of these models and some resources specific to each model. For example, if you want to include youth centers in your program design, we have a youth center toolkit just specifically for that model. And then we've also curated the content around sector-specific guidance. So if what you're really interested in is digging in from the sector angle of youth peace and security, or agriculture and food security, or global health, we have resources for you that are broken down in that way as well. And finally, we should never underestimate the importance of peer-to-peer learning. And so we've also included recommended different networks and communities of practice, either kind of globally youth-led networks or networks focused on youth development, as well as sector-specific networks. So I want to take you through a couple of slides now that give you a bit of a sneak preview of what you will see when the Global Lead Toolkit is up online on the YouthPower website. And so we have a section on program planning guidance, as I mentioned, that takes you through some of the key aspects when you're thinking about approaching a new program involving young people. And all of this is really built around how can we create more opportunities through our program design and both the actual implementation, like what are those intervention models, as well as the entire phase of the program cycle, whether we're talking about the design process itself, the monitoring and evaluation aspects, communications, planning, et cetera. There are opportunities to increase the inclusion of youth voices, the leadership of young people, and the presence of young people in civic spaces in all of those areas. And so this gives you some kind of general guidance around good practices and points you to other existing resources that will really help you take that program planning to the next level. And then we also have sector-specific guidance, as I mentioned. And so that is where we've broken things down into some of these key sectors of programming to give you policy and strategy, statistics, best practices, program design documents, curricula, networks and communities of practice, and specific program examples. So a lot to dig in here. If you just aren't sure where to start, or you're looking for, say, a specific example of a program that already works in this sector, what can you find out about it? We've got resources for you here. And then I think the most exciting part is the adaptable intervention models database. And so when we have the full toolkit up online on youthpower.org, you'll be able to go into this database and search by different filters or keywords to help you narrow down which of these models might be the right fit for you. That might be by sector, by age, by the program cycle phase. So if you're looking for an intervention that you could integrate into your program design process, like setting up a youth advisory group, you'll find that in here. And so this is kind of, again, the sneak preview. And I'm really pleased, though, to share, as Hillary said earlier, hot off the presses, we do have the PDF versions of the toolkit ready to share with you now. So we have two different documents, the main toolkit, and then there's the adaptable intervention models database as a kind of standalone PDF as well. So what I would love to do, because I think there's only so much value that comes out of me talking at you about this toolkit, I would love to have us all do a bit of a scavenger hunt. So if you haven't already clicked those links, please do click on the links to both of the documents, the PDF version of the toolkit and the adaptable intervention models database. And we are going to put up a series of scavenger hunt questions. And this is the opportunity to actually start digging in to get a feel for what you will see and where you're going to be able to find the information when you want to go look for it and actually put this toolkit into practice. So let's get the questions up on the screen. And I think we may also share them in the chat box for your reference. And I'm just going to kind of start talking through these questions, but I would love for everybody to start looking for the answers in the PDFs by opening those links. And when you find an answer, drop it in the chat box. I'm watching the chat box to see what's going on. So the first question is, which section of the toolkit includes guidance on considering diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion in engaging young people? And what is one recommended resource on this topic? So you're going to find which section of the toolkit talks about diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and give me an example of one of the resources listed there. You know, this is something that was highlighted by Anne in the conversation that we just heard about the importance of making sure that we are including diverse young voices. So I'm waiting to see some answers. I know it's going to take a few minutes to start digging around. And so while you're looking for that, and we had a request to get another link for the intervention models. So while we're going through that, I also want to ask the next question, which is, according to the toolkit, what is one of the benefits of creating and sharing stories of program impact? And what sample press kit is included in the toolkit? So I mentioned a couple of minutes ago that I think communications is an area where there's a lot of unmet potential. And so I really want to encourage you all to check out, there's content around how to develop a communications plan, the value of really putting resources and thought into your communication strategy around programming, and also specifically some guidance and resources around storytelling. One of the models in the intervention models database is also youth-led media. And that, I think, is a real area of strength that also taps into some of what Daria was saying about the importance of meeting young people where they're at, including on social media. All right, so we're starting to get some answers here. So for the design your program, there is information about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's actually in part 1 around integrating youth voices. So when we talk about youth, we're talking about a very large and diverse population. So we've got some different activities or different information and guidance for some resources there. And then we also do have information. You all are correct. In Design Your Program, page 9, there is additional information. So there's actually 2 different spots where this element is highlighted and where we have some specific resources. And YouthRex is a source of a couple of these really excellent resources, as well as that DEI starter kit. Awesome. Okay, so good work. We've got some folks have found the answer to the first question. So keep working at your own pace, or if you don't want to go in order and you just want to pick one of these questions that's really interesting to you, by all means, please go ahead and dig into it. I want to encourage you all to start to get familiar with the main toolkit, where the content is and how it's organized, as well as specifically the intervention models database. So that's where that third question comes in. So that's your first clue. The third question, what is one illustrative indicator for the intervention model of youth-led media, art, or performance? You're going to find that in the adaptable intervention models document as opposed to the main toolkit. Although there's a link to the intervention models database in the toolkit as well. So the PDF versions, these links are live on the YouthPower website. So they are in the resource library now. The full interactive web-based version will be coming later this year. So these ones are already there and ready for you to use. But the part of the version of the toolkit where you'll be able to do that searchable database and so on, that should be up by the end of 2021. So I see a response, increase awareness of positive change being made. Absolutely, that is one of the benefits of creating and sharing stories of program impact. And it is from the Youth Mappers program, which is an awesome program training young people to actually be map makers and using digital tools through university chapters. I also wanted to call out for something that I think it was Daria who talked about the importance, and actually Anai as well, the importance of peer-to-peer models. And so that's why we have here this question of what are the 4 peer-to-peer service models that are included in the intervention models database. And so that's a question around, we wanted to be sure to include interventions specifically that have been kind of tried and tested, and to also make a distinction between the nuances of those different peer-to-peer service models. So there's 4 specifically peer-to-peer service models that are included in the intervention models database, and I would love to see if anyone has figured out what they are. Some of them might be pretty obvious based on the names. Oh yeah, we got all of the indicators. Thanks, Matthew. So for youth-led media, art, or performance, there's a bunch of different indicators that you could potentially use, including measuring the kind of number of media campaigns or youth-led content, and as well as looking at improvement in communication skills or technical skills related to things like photography, video making, and so on. Wonderful. Well done. We got some excellent scavenger hunt participants here. Excellent. All right. We have peer educators, peer mentors, peer mobilizers, and there's one more that doesn't start with the word peer, but is still a peer-to-peer service model. So that's 3 of the 4. While y'all are hunting through those, there is a bonus question asking which of these models is actually not recommended for health programs based on available evidence. So if you found a note about that, I would love to share, see you share in the chat box which of these is not actually recommended for health programs specifically. But we're really excited to expand on this kind of information, these models, to give a lot of different options and nuance. So it's kind of a menu. You can pick and mix and match based on what's going to work best in the context that you're working in, the sector that you're working in, and the other variables that are part of building effective programming. So the distinction here, though, is I think a really important one. Peer educators are more of that, say, training of trainers model, where you're training up young people to deliver information and learning sessions to other young people. Peer mentors is much more of a focus on kind of building supportive relationships. And peer mobilizers is actually more specifically around connecting young people to services through referrals and those kinds of activities, and possibly even accompanying other young people to get to the availability of services. And absolutely, thank you. Peer educators is actually a methodology that is not recommended for health programs, although it is used quite a bit. Great question. What about a peer service provider? Yeah, we actually have that, I think, listed as youth service providers or service corps, and that is the 4th model. That is a peer-to-peer model. So the idea of when you have young people who are specifically trained in a professional field, that could be in physical health, in mental health, in legal services, any of those things where it's specifically young people who are then providing those professional services to other young people. That is the 4th model. Great question about social justice youth development frameworks. Absolutely. So this is something that we really did seriously consider, and we use the PYD framework that's the USAID PYD framework, but a big aspect of incorporating content into the Global Lead Toolkit is making sure that that aspect of social justice is also part of it. And so that's why you'll see a lot around the importance of having young people be centered in program design and implementation, about incorporating that diversity, and in models that specifically help build youth voice and their agency to express themselves and to take action in their communities. And that's really a big part of what Global Lead is all about. Okay. So I think that hopefully you all have had a chance to get into at least one of the toolkit documents to start to get a feel for the kinds of resources and guidance that you might find there. We know that a toolkit, it's just a toolkit, but we're still really excited about this resource, and we hope that you all will find valuable information in here and things that will help make your work easier and really get people thinking more outside the box about what's possible when you are creating programming, whether it's youth focused or youth inclusive. How are you intentionally creating spaces and opportunities and the support needed to make sure that young people have a chance to step into civic spaces, to take on leadership roles, to really help shape the development of their communities? So I encourage you to keep looking around at these resources, check this out. I hope you'll put it to use and be on the lookout for when the web-based version of the toolkit goes live, because then you'll just be able to search all of this content directly on the YouthPower website. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Mike to wrap us up.
Awesome. And first and foremost, what an amazing opening day. I've loved the insights of so many of our young change makers like Victor and Philbert, Sylvia, Gael, Awolaji, and so many of the others. And thank you, Jesse and Hillary, and everyone who's engaged around the Global Lead Toolkit interventions. It's definitely a collective impact model because it draws from so many different tools and interventions and the experience of so many of you and your organizations. So we're excited to have this kind of new partnership of Global Lead with youth-led efforts to increase that kind of continuum of partnership on education and civic political engagement and leadership across all our sectors. And as Jesse said, this toolkit's awesome. It's just, it is, on one hand, it could be seen as a little bit overwhelming, and yet the structure of it, if you've gone in, you'll see there's all these jump hyperlink icons that can take you exactly to where you want to be at any certain point. And that's what we're trying to do, is like help you find great intervention tools, indicators, samples at the moment you need them as you're designing a new program or wanting to strengthen your program. And it all ties back into kind of what we're trying to do, which is through this big, hairy goal of 1 million young change makers that we're working together and supporting to meet those development goals in their communities and countries. So that's the vision of Global Lead. And I think what you've seen from today, straight from the voice of young leaders that are incredibly inspiring in what they're doing right now, and with tools like the Global Lead Toolkit, we're really trying to like bridge that gap of what needs to happen to really have meaningful partnership and engagement across this. So our call to action to you is to partner with us on Global Lead as a new compact that really works together to meet the SDGs and these other big development priorities. And we look forward to hearing from you on how this toolkit and this initiative can best support your work, whether you're a USAID, a staff member in Washington or in the field, or an implementing partner, or the leader of a young Changemakers initiative in Malawi or Guatemala or wherever. So with that, I want to pass it back to Chiranti to close out day one. Thanks.